The first message came at 11:42 on a Tuesday night from a woman Facebook said I might know. That was funny because I knew her before I knew how to shave properly, before I knew how mortgages worked, before I knew a person could love you and still leave. Her name was Bethany Mercer now. But in my head, she was still Bethany Hayes, 17 years old, standing under a paper moon in the Cedar Ridge High gym, wearing a blue satin dress and laughing like the whole world had just told a joke only she understood. The message had no words, just a photo. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Portland, Oregon, eating cold leftover Chinese food straight from the carton, like the divorced cliché I had sworn I would never become. I'm Mark Whitaker, 55 years old, owner of a small custom cabinet shop, father of one grown daughter who thinks I need a hobby that involves other humans. I had been divorced 7 years, long enough to stop flinching when people asked if I was seeing anyone, not long enough to enjoy the silence of my house. The photo loaded slowly, line by line, like the past was being lowered into my hands. And then there we were, me and Bethany. Prom night, 1988. I had forgotten the picture existed. I wish I could say I looked cool in it, but there I was, in a rented white tux with shoulder pads big enough to land a helicopter on. My hair had been aggressively feathered. My bow tie was crooked. I looked like a kid pretending to be a man. Bethany, though. Bethany looked exactly the way memory had protected her. Soft brown curls pinned up with little white flowers. One hand on my lapel. Her smile tilted toward me, not the camera. Like I had said something right before the flash. Something dumb enough to make her laugh, but sweet enough to make her stay close. I stared at that photo until my takeout went cold in a deeper, more permanent way. Then I noticed the second image. She had sent the back of the photo too. The handwriting was mine. At 17, I wrote in all capital letters because I thought it made me seem decisive. If we're both still single when we're 55, we meet at the Bluebird Diner on June 12th. No excuses. Mark. Underneath it, in Bethany's rounded handwriting, she had added, "And you have to buy me pie." Beth. I stopped breathing for a second. Not dramatically, not like in movies. More like my body had run into a wall it did not know was there. June 12th. I looked at the calendar hanging beside the fridge. June 10th. 2 days. My phone sat in my hand, glowing. I hadn't spoken to Bethany Hayes in 37 years. Not really. There had been a short, awkward exchange at our 10-year reunion when we were both married to other people and careful not to stand too close. A Christmas card once from her and her husband, back when people still mailed photos of toddlers in matching sweaters. I had heard through my mother that Bethany moved to Boise, then Denver, then somewhere outside Spokane. I knew she had been widowed 3 years ago, according to the quiet machinery of small-town gossip. I had not reached out then. I told myself it would have been inappropriate. Maybe it would have been. Maybe I was a coward hiding behind good manners. For 7 years after my divorce, I had built cabinets, visited my daughter, took walks, paid bills, and convinced myself that wanting less was the same thing as being peaceful. Then one photo arrived, and suddenly I was 17 again in the most dangerous way. My phone buzzed. This time words appeared. Bethany Mercer. I found this in my mother's attic today. I almost didn't send it. I read that sentence 4 times. My thumb hovered over the screen. What did a man say to the girl who once made him believe the future was a place you could choose by writing on the back of a photograph? I typed, "Wow." Deleted it. Typed, "You still owe me a dance." Deleted that too because apparently I had turned into a man who negotiated with ghosts. Finally, I wrote, "I remember that night." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Bethany. Do you remember what you said before the picture? I leaned back in my chair. There are memories that fade because they were never important. And then there are memories that hide because they were. I closed my eyes. The gym smelled like floor wax, cheap cologne, and carnations. The DJ had played Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac twice because someone's older brother kept requesting it. Bethany and I had escaped to the hallway because it was too hot inside, and she had been holding her heels in one hand. I remembered her looking at me with a seriousness that did not belong on a 17-year-old face. "Promise me we won't become boring," she had said. And I, full of all the arrogant certainty a teenage boy can fit into a rented tux, had said, "If life messes this up, we'll fix it later." Later. That word had taken 37 years to come back for me. I said if life messed it up, we'd fix it later. The reply came fast. "Bethany, you do remember." I stared at those 3 words and felt something loosen in my chest. Then she sent another message. "Bethany, I wasn't brave enough to look for you when Frank died. I wasn't brave enough after that either. But today I found this photo in a shoebox while emptying Mom's attic, and I sat on the floor like an idiot for 20 minutes, smiling and crying over your terrible tux." I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. The sound startled me in my own kitchen. I wrote, "That tux was the height of sophistication. Bethany, Mark, that tux had its own zip code." There she was, not just a memory, not just a widow, not a sad chapter from a life I had almost lived. Bethany, sharp, warm, alive. I found myself smiling at the phone like a man half my age and twice as foolish. Then she wrote, "Are you still in Portland?" I told her yes. She told me she was in Spokane, staying at her late mother's house for the week, sorting through boxes with her sister. Cedar Ridge was halfway between us, almost exactly. The Bluebird Diner was still there. I knew because my mother had mentioned it last Christmas, complaining that they changed the coffee brand but not the carpet. For a minute, neither of us typed. That was when I felt the danger of it. Not danger like fear, danger like hope. At 55, you know better than to confuse a message with a miracle. You know people grow into versions of themselves nobody at prom could have predicted. You know grief changes the shape of a person. Divorce does, too. You know chemistry can survive in memory better than in real life. But I also knew this. My hand was shaking. And not because I was afraid of the past. Because for the first time in years, I wanted something badly enough to be embarrassed by it. Bethany, June 12th is Friday. I swallowed. Bethany, I know this is ridiculous. I typed before I could talk myself out of it. Me. It was ridiculous in 1988. That didn't stop us then. A pause. Then, Bethany, if I drive to Cedar Ridge on Friday, will you meet me at the Bluebird? I looked around my quiet kitchen, at the single bowl in the sink, at the chair across from me that had collected mail because no one ever sat there anymore, at the life I had built to be safe and found. Suddenly, that safe had started to feel like small. I put the phone down, stood up, and walked to the hallway closet. On the top shelf was a cardboard box I hadn't opened since the divorce. Old yearbooks, baseball cards, a cassette tape labeled Road Mix in Bethany's handwriting. And there, folded inside my senior yearbook, was the matching half of a memory, a dried blue ribbon from her wrist corsage. I held it in my palm, fragile as breath. Then I picked up the phone and typed, "Me. I'll be there. And I still owe you pie." Her answer came back almost immediately. "Bethany, Cherry, you better remember that too." I smiled so hard it hurt. Then a second message arrived. "Bethany, there's one more thing written on the photo. I didn't show you the bottom corner." Before I could respond, another image appeared. A close-up of the back of the photo. Below the promise about the diner, almost hidden where the paper had yellowed, was one more line in my handwriting. "If you come, I'll tell you I never stopped loving you." My kitchen went completely still. And then Bethany sent one final message. Bethany, did you mean it then, Mark, or do you mean it now? I stared at her question until the screen dimmed. Did you mean it then, Mark, or do you mean it now? There are questions a man can answer quickly because they cost him nothing. How's work? Fine. How's your daughter? Wonderful. How have you been? Busy. But Bethany had always had a gift for asking the one thing I could not hide behind. I typed 3 different replies and erased all of them. Finally, I wrote, me. I meant it then. I watched the dots appear. Before she could respond, I added, me. And I'm afraid I might still mean more of it than I have any right to. For almost a full minute, nothing came back. In that minute, I became aware of every sound in my house. The refrigerator humming, the rain beginning against the kitchen window, my own pulse in my ears. Then my phone rang. Not a message, a call. Bethany Mercer. I answered so fast I nearly dropped it. Hello? There was breathing on the other end first. Then a small laugh, shaky and familiar enough to knock the ears out from under me. Hi, Mark. I had not heard her voice in decades. It was lower now, softer at the edges. But the melody of it was the same, the little upward turn when she said my name, like she was both greeting me and teasing me for taking myself too seriously. Hi, Beth. Oh, she whispered. What? You still call me Beth. I leaned against the counter because my knees had become unreliable. That a problem? No. I could hear the smile in her voice. Everyone calls me Bethany now, or Mrs. Mercer if they're trying to sell me something. But you... Beth, I said again, because suddenly I wanted to give her something only I had kept. She was quiet. Then she said, I didn't expect this to feel so immediate. Neither did I. I thought I'd send the picture. We'd laugh about your tux. My historically important tux. And then maybe we'd say we should catch up sometime and never do it. That was your plan? That was my coward's plan, yes. I smiled into the dark kitchen. And what ruined it? You remembered. The simple honesty of that made my chest ache. I pulled out the chair and sat again. I remember more than I thought I did. Like what? I looked at the photo still open on my laptop now, our young faces shining under the gym lights. You hated the punch because someone put too much lemon in it. You had a blister on your right heel. You said the paper moon looked like a taco. She laughed, and there it was. The same bright spill of sound that had once made me do stupid things just to hear it. I stand by that, she said. It was a terrible moon. You also told me you wanted to leave Cedar Ridge and see the ocean from somewhere besides a postcard. I did do that, she said quietly. Eventually. I'm glad. A pause followed, not awkward but deep. Mark? Yeah. I loved my husband. I know. I need to say that before Friday. I'm glad you did. Her breath trembled. Frank was good. He was steady. He made me laugh in a completely different way than you did. When he died, I thought the part of me that wanted anything beyond getting through the day had died too. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, Beth. I know, and I know you mean that. She exhaled. But today, when I found that photo, I didn't feel like I was betraying him. I felt like some door opened in a room I forgot I was allowed to enter. I swallowed hard. My divorce had not been dramatic. No smashed dishes, no grand betrayal, just 2 people becoming strangers in slow motion, polite enough to make it hurt worse. Afterward, I told everyone I was fine, because fine was less embarrassing than lonely. I haven't been brave either, I said. About what? Wanting someone. She went very quiet. So I kept going before I lost my nerve. I've been alone 7 years. I made it respectable. Work, family, routines. I convinced myself I was being mature. But the truth is, I stopped reaching for anything I couldn't control. And now? Now you sent me a picture of a boy in a ridiculous tux who apparently had more courage than I do. Bethany gave a wet little laugh. He was very confident for someone with feathered hair. He had excellent taste in girls. Girls, she said. Careful, Whitaker. I grinned. Women, then. He had excellent taste in women he was not remotely prepared to deserve. That's better. The banner steadied us. It always had. We could flirt our way across a canyon and only admit we were scared once we reached the other side. Friday, she said. Are we really doing this? Yes. You don't want to think about it? I have thought about it for 37 years. I just didn't know that's what I was doing. Another silence. Then she said very softly, That was a good answer. It was an honest one. Those are inconvenient. Terribly. She laughed again, and I wanted, with a sudden physical hunger, to see her face when she did it. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. What did you feel when you saw the last line? She did not answer right away. I put my hand over my mouth, she said finally, like some teenager in a movie. Then I got angry. Angry. At time. At myself. At you, a little. Me. You wrote that down and never told me. I was 17. You had a pen. I also had no plan beyond surviving graduation and convincing you I knew how to slow dance. You did not know how to slow dance. I held you, didn't I? Her breath caught. The mood shifted so quickly that I felt it across the line. Yes, she said. You did. I remembered it then with painful clarity. My hand at the small of her back, her cheek near my collar, the nervous space between us disappearing 1 inch at a time until there was no space left. I had not known what forever meant, but in that moment I had wanted to start learning. Beth, I said, yes? If we meet Friday, I don't want to pretend we're just old friends catching up. No, she whispered. Neither do I. The words moved through me like a match struck in a dark room. I don't know what we are, I said. I don't know what's possible. I don't either. But I want to find out. Her answer came without hesitation. So do I. I sat there smiling like a fool, and for the first time in years, I did not feel foolish for it. We talked for another hour, not about grand destiny, about ordinary things. Her mother's attic and the dust in her hair, my cabinet shop and the walnut table I was building for a restaurant, her sister's bossiness, my daughter's conviction that I needed a social life before I turned into a decorative hermit. Bethany laughed at that. For so long I had to defend myself. I'm not decorative. No, she said, still amused. You were always more functional. That sounds like a review for a vacuum cleaner. A very handsome vacuum cleaner. I froze. She seemed to realize what she'd said at the same time I did. Well, she murmured, there it is. There what is? The part where I admit I looked at your profile picture. Oh, did you? Briefly. How briefly? Long enough to think your beard works for you. My face warmed like I was 17 again. She had just touched my hand under the cafeteria table. For the record, I said, I looked at yours too. And? And I had to sit down. She was silent. I let the truth stand there between us. Then she said, Mark, it's true. I'm not 17 anymore. Thank God. That startled a laugh out of her. Excuse me? At 17, you were beautiful and terrifying. At 55, you look like someone I could actually spend an afternoon with and still want the evening. Her voice softened. You always did know how to get past me. No, I said. I just always wanted to. When we finally hung up, it was nearly 1 a.m. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I opened the old cardboard box again and found the cassette tape she had made me in May of 1988. I had no way to play it anymore, but I remembered every song. At the bottom of the box was my senior prom ticket stub. I tucked it into my wallet. The next morning, I called my shop manager and told him I would be taking Friday off. "Hot date?" he asked. I looked at the prom photo on my counter, at Bethany's young hand resting against my rented lapel, at the promise we had been too young to keep and somehow not too old to answer. "Yeah," I said, and this time I didn't make it sound like a joke. On Friday morning, I changed shirts 4 times. At 55, a man should be beyond standing in front of a mirror, wondering whether blue made him look approachable or desperate. Apparently, I was not that evolved. I settled on a gray button-down my daughter had once said made me look less like I owned a bandsaw, trimmed my beard, and left Portland 2 hours earlier than necessary. The drive to Cedar Ridge was all green hills, wet pavement, and memories appearing in inconvenient places. The gas station where I'd bought Bethany a cherry Coke with my last dollar. The old football field where she'd made me dance with her after a game because she said victory deserved music, even if there wasn't any. The turnoff by Miller's Creek where we had parked my father's Buick and kissed until the windows fogged, both of us pretending we weren't scared by how much we wanted. I pulled into town just after noon. Cedar Ridge looked smaller, the way hometowns do when you return with adult eyes and a teenage heart. The movie theater was now a dental office. The pharmacy had become a yoga studio. But the Bluebird Diner still sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, stubbornly turquoise, with a faded sign of a bird carrying a coffee cup in its beak. I parked across the street and sat with both hands on the wheel. For 3 days I had imagined this moment so many ways that reality felt almost rude. What if the chemistry lived only in messages? What if grief had made her reach for a memory instead of me? What if I disappointed her by being exactly what I was? A decent, lonely man with sawdust in his truck and no idea how to begin again. My phone buzzed. "Beth." "I'm here." Booth by the window. "And before you ask, yes. I saw you sitting in your truck talking yourself out of coming in." I looked up. Through the diner window I saw her. Not 17, not memory. Beth. She sat in the last booth, sunlight falling across one shoulder, wearing a green sweater and her hair loose around her face. It was threaded with silver now, and instead of making her seem older, it made her look illuminated from the inside. She lifted one hand and wiggled her fingers. Then she mouthed, "Coward." I laughed so hard the knot in my chest broke. I typed, "Strategic breathing." She replied, "Breathe while walking." So I did. The bell over the diner door jingled when I stepped inside. The place smelled like coffee, grilled onions, and sugar, exactly as if 37 years had been waiting under a heat lamp. Beth stood. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, and every version of myself, boy, husband, father, divorced man, careful man, went quiet. "Hi, Mark," she said. "Hi, Beth." We both laughed softly, because we had already done this over the phone. But voices in the same room were different. They had weight, warmth, consequences. "You're taller than I remember," she said. "You're shorter than I remember." I was wearing heels and unreasonable confidence. I was wearing shoulder pads and fear. She grinned. "Fair." Then the humor faded. I stepped closer. She did too. We hugged like people trying to be polite and failing immediately. Her arms went around my back. Mine closed around her shoulders. She fit against me differently now and exactly the same. Softer, realer. Her cheek brushed my collarbone, and I felt her take one unsteady breath. I had planned to say something charming. Instead, I closed my eyes and held on. "Mark," she whispered. "I know." We stood there too long for old friends, and not nearly long enough for what we had been. A waitress cleared her throat kindly. "Coffee?" Beth stepped back, cheeks pink. "Yes, please. 2." And cherry pie, I said. Beth pointed at me. He remembered. The waitress, a woman about our age with reading glasses on a chain, looked between us and smiled like she knew exactly what kind of trouble had entered her diner. Coming right up. We slid into the booth across from each other. For the first few minutes we were almost formal. We stirred coffee, commented on the rain, mentioned traffic. Two adults pretending the table between them was not humming. Then Beth reached into her purse and took out the photograph. She placed it between us. The sight of our 17-year-old faces under the diner lights did something strange to me. Not sadness exactly. More like tenderness for two kids who had meant what they said without understanding the price of time. Beth touched the corner of the picture. I carried it in my purse the whole drive. I brought something too. I opened my wallet and took out the prom ticket stub. Her mouth parted. You kept that? Apparently, I'm more sentimental than my workshop suggests. She picked it up carefully, as if it might bruise. Mark Whitaker, she said softly, you are a dangerous man. That's not a phrase used often by people who've seen me compare drawer pulls. She laughed, then covered my hand with hers. The contact was simple. Skin on skin. But the years between us seemed to collapse to one narrow bridge. And there we were, standing on it. Her thumb moved once across my knuckle. I was nervous you'd look at me and only see who I used to be, she said. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers through hers. I was nervous you wouldn't. Her eyes lifted to mine. That's the trick, isn't it? I said. I see her. I see you. I don't want to go backward, Beth. I don't want to pretend we're 17. Good, she said, though her eyes shone, because I refuse to redo algebra. I would not survive gym class. And I have earned every comfortable shoe I own, I smiled. You look beautiful. The words came out quietly, but they landed hard. Beth looked down at our hands. I practiced being calm if you said something like that. How's it going? Poorly. Good. She looked up again. Good? I like knowing I can still get to you. Her smile turned slow and unmistakably flirtatious. Careful. I might start trying back. I'm counting on it. The pie arrived then, saving us from spontaneously combusting in a family restaurant. We shared one slice because Beth insisted that was more ceremonious. She took the first bite and closed her eyes. Oh, she said, that's indecent. I watched a dot of cherry filling cling to the corner of her mouth and nearly forgot how language worked. What? She asked. You have... I gestured. She dabbed the wrong side with her napkin. No, other side. She missed again on purpose this time. I knew it from the spark in her eyes. You're enjoying this, I said. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I reached across the table, slowly enough for her to stop me. She didn't. With my thumb, I brushed the cherry from the corner of her mouth. Her breath caught. Mine did too. For one suspended second, my hand remained near her face, and she leaned, not much, just enough that her cheek touched my palm. There are moments when desire is not young or frantic. It is quieter than that, deeper. It arrives wearing all the years you survived without it and asks if you are finally willing to open the door. Beth turned her face and kissed the inside of my wrist. The touch was brief. It undid me completely. Beth, I said, rougher than I intended. I wanted to do that, she whispered. So I did. I laughed under my breath. I'm in serious trouble. Yes, she said, but I think you'll like it. After pie, we walked through town beneath a soft gray sky, our shoulders brushing until I stopped pretending it was accidental and took her hand. She squeezed once, as if answering a question I had not asked aloud. At the old high school, the gym doors were locked, but through the narrow window we could see the polished floor where the paper moon had hung. Beth stood beside me, close enough that her sleeve touched mine. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together? Yes, I said. And? And then I stop. She looked at me. Because if I start loving some imaginary life, I might miss this one. Her expression changed, softened, opened. This one, she repeated. I lifted our joined hands and kissed her knuckles. I drove here for this one. Beth stepped closer. Then maybe we should stop standing outside locked doors. Before I could answer, she rose on her toes and kissed me. It was not a teenage kiss. It was slower, braver, a little trembling. Her hand rested against my chest, and mine found her waist, and for a few seconds there was no old promise, no lost time, no question of what came next. Only Beth, warm and real, choosing me in the rain. When she drew back, her eyes stayed closed for a heartbeat. Then she smiled. You still know how to hold me, she said. I touched my forehead to hers. I'm a fast learner. Her phone buzzed then, sharp in the quiet. She glanced at the screen, and the color shifted in her face. Not fear exactly, but something guarded. My sister, she said. She's asking if I told you yet. Told me what? Beth looked at our hands, still linked. Then she held tighter. That I'm supposed to leave for Denver on Sunday, she said. And I don't know if I want to anymore. Denver. The word fell between us with more weight than it deserved. I still held Beth's hand outside the locked gym. Doors, rain silvering her hair, my mouth still warm from kissing her. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't heard. Another part, the 55-year-old part that had learned how quickly joy could be negotiated down, stepped back inside itself. Denver, I said. Beth winced. That sounded worse than I meant it to. Are you moving there? I was. She looked through the gym window at the empty floor. Maybe, I don't know. I waited. She turned toward me fully. After Frank died, I stayed in Spokane because it was familiar. Then Mom got sick, and I kept telling myself I'd make decisions later. After she passed, my sister and I agreed to sell the house. I have a friend in Denver who offered me work managing events at her gallery. I told her I'd come Sunday, stay a month, see if it fit. A trial run, yes. And now? She gave a helpless little laugh. Now I kissed you outside our old gym, and suddenly all my practical plans looked like they were written by a woman who had not accounted for you. I should have smiled. Instead, I felt the old fear rise, the one that said wanting made you vulnerable, and vulnerable people got left with polite explanations. Beth, I said carefully, I don't want to be the reason you don't go. Her eyes sharpened. That sounded noble. I was aiming for decent. It also sounded like you were already opening the door for me. That's not fair. No. She pulled her hand from mine, not angrily, but enough that I felt the loss. Mark, I didn't drive 3 hours and kiss you in the rain so you could become reasonable at me. At you. Yes, aggressively reasonable. Despite myself, I laughed. I'm trying not to crowd you. I'm trying to find out if you want me close. The word struck clean. A truck hissed by on the wet street. Somewhere behind us, a flag rope clinked against the pole. Beth stood there with her chin lifted, not a memory, not a delicate thing to protect, but a woman asking to be met. So I stopped hiding. I want you close, I said. So close I'm afraid if I say it plainly, I'll scare us both. Her expression softened, but she did not let me off easily. Plainly, anyway. I took a breath. I want more than one afternoon. I want dinner tonight. I want tomorrow morning coffee. I want to learn who you are when you're tired and impatient and when you've had too much pie. I want to kiss you somewhere that isn't public property. My voice roughened. And if you go to Denver Sunday, I want to know when I can see you again, before you even leave. Beth's lips parted. Then she stepped back into me and laid both hands on my chest. There you are. I covered her hands with mine. Too much? No. She smiled. Possibly overdue. We stood like that until the rain pushed us under the school awning. It felt absurd and intimate. Two grown people hiding from weather beside a building that had once held our younger selves. Beth tilted her head. Dinner tonight? Yes. Not the Bluebird. No, we fulfilled the pie clause. Good. Because if this is our second first date, I want tablecloths. Ambitious. I waited 37 years, Mark. I'm getting cloth napkins. I took her to a small inn 12 miles outside Cedar Ridge, where the dining room overlooked the river, and the candles on the tables made everyone look like they had secrets worth keeping. Beth had changed into a black dress with tiny pearl buttons, and when she walked into the lobby, I forgot the sentence I was saying to the hostess. Beth noticed. Of course she did. She came close, eyes bright. You were about to ask for a table. I was. You were. I may need supervision. I suspected as much in 1988. At dinner, we did not pretend to be casual. We ordered wine. We asked real questions. She told me Frank used to sing badly when he cooked, and how silence after his funeral had felt physical, like furniture she kept walking into. I told her my marriage had ended not with a crash, but with a long mutual vanishing, and how ashamed I'd been that I missed being desired more than I missed being married. Beth reached across the table and took my hand. You don't have to be ashamed of wanting to be wanted, she said. The candlelight moved in her eyes. No? No. I want that too. Her thumb traced the line of my palm. I want to be looked at the way you looked at me in the diner. How was that? Like you were remembering and discovering at the same time. I turned her hand over and kissed the center of her palm. That's exactly what I was doing. Her breath changed. Just slightly. Enough. After dinner, we walked down to the river path behind the inn. The rain had stopped, leaving everything dark and shining. Beth slipped her arm through mine, then rested her head against my shoulder, as if we had been doing it for years. I'm not asking you to solve Denver tonight, I said. I know. And I'm not asking you to choose me over a life you were brave enough to plan. She stopped walking. I faced her beneath a dripping cedar tree. But I am asking you not to decide without including me, I said. Not because you owe me anything, because I want a chance. Beth studied me for a long moment. A chance at what? At us. Whatever shape that takes. Weekend drives, long phone calls, me making terrible excuses to visit Denver galleries, you discovering Portland has superior coffee. Bold claim, defensible claim. Her smile trembled. And if it gets complicated, it will. And if we're bad at it, we'll learn. And if I get scared, I stepped closer. Then you tell me, and I'll tell you when I get scared. We can be terrified honestly. That might be our advantage. Beth touched my cheek, fingertips cool from the night air. You got better at this. I had decades to draft the speech. She laughed softly, then rose on her toes and kissed me. This kiss was not a surprise like the first. It was a decision. Her arms slid around my neck. Mine settled at her waist, drawing her in until her body aligned with mine, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. She kissed me like a woman who had been polite with longing long enough. When we parted, she stayed close. I want the chance too, she whispered. I don't know what I'm doing Sunday, but I know what I'm doing tomorrow. What? Spending it with you. I smiled against her forehead. All day? All day. She paused. And Mark? Yeah? I want you to kiss me goodnight properly. So I did. Not like a boy at prom. Not like a man afraid of asking too much. I kissed her slowly, with my hand at the back of her neck and her fingers curled in my shirt, while the river moved beside us in the dark. Later, after I walked her to her car, she opened the door, but didn't get in. My sister thinks I'm being reckless, Beth said. Are you? Maybe. She looked at me over the roof of the car. But for the first time in 3 years, reckless doesn't feel like falling apart. It feels like waking up. The next morning, I arrived at her mother's house with coffee and a paper bag of blueberry muffins. Beth opened the door barefoot, in jeans and a soft white sweater, hair pinned messily on top of her head. The sight of her like that, ordinary, unguarded, smiling because I was on the porch, hit me harder than the black dress. Hi, she said. Hi. You brought breakfast? I'm courting you. There are protocols. She took the coffee carrier, then leaned in and kissed me, quick and pleased. Proceed. We spent the morning in the attic, sorting boxes while dust floated in sunlight. We found yearbooks, Christmas ornaments, old report cards, and a shoebox full of Beth's teenage notes. At the bottom was a sealed envelope with my name on it. Mark, my handwriting. Beth looked at me. I don't remember that, I said. She handed it over, suddenly quiet. Inside was a single folded page, yellowed at the edges. I read the first line and felt the room tilt. Beth, if I lose my nerve tonight, this is what I should have said before you leave. I sat on an old trunk in Beth's mother's attic with the letter shaking in my hands. Beth stood in front of me, one palm pressed to her mouth. Read it, she said. So I did. Beth. If I lose my nerve tonight, this is what I should have said before you leave. I know everyone thinks we're too young to mean things. Maybe they're right. Maybe life is bigger than us. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm not waiting to become myself. I already am. I don't want to keep you in Cedar Ridge. I don't want you to make your world smaller for me. I just want you to know that wherever you go, there is a boy here who loves you badly, stupidly, completely. And if life gets in the way, if we become other people, if we lose track of this somehow, meet me later. I'll find you. I promise. Mark. By the end, my voice had gone thin. Beth lowered herself onto the trunk beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Dust turned in the attic light like tiny planets. I never got that, she whispered. I must have written it before graduation. I stared at the page, seeing the uneven pressure of my teenage hand. Maybe I meant to give it to you after prom. But you didn't. No. Why? The easy answer was that I was young. The truer answer sat heavier. Because your father got that job in California, I said. Because you were leaving in August. Because I heard my dad tell my mom that first loves ruin practical decisions. Because I loved you enough to want you free, and not enough to trust you with the choice. Beth's eyes filled. That sounds noble again. It wasn't. It was fear wearing a decent jacket. She let out a broken little laugh. You and your jackets. I folded the letter carefully. I'm sorry. For what? For not giving it to you? For deciding what was best for us without asking you? For letting 37 years pass and calling it fate when some of it was cowardice? Beth took the letter from my hands and set it on the trunk between us. Then she took my face in both her hands. Mark, she said, we were 17. I know. We were children trying to hold a whole future with both hands. We dropped it. Of course we did. Her thumbs brushed beneath my eyes, and only then did I realize I was crying. But we're not children now, she said. No. So don't make the same mistake twice. I covered her hands with mine. Tell me how not to. Ask me what I want. The attic seemed to go still around us. What do you want, Beth? She inhaled slowly. I want Denver not to feel like escape. I want Spokane not to feel like a waiting room. I want my mother's house sold because I'm ready, not because I'm running. I want to wake up and have something to look forward to that isn't just a task list. Her voice trembled, but her gaze stayed steady. And I want you, not the boy in the tux, not the promise, you. The man who brings coffee and says the wrong noble thing and kisses me like he's finally come home. I laughed and cried at the same time, which is not dignified at any age. I want you too, I said. In the morning, in the inconvenient parts, in Portland, Denver, wherever we can make room. I don't need you to cancel your life for me. I know, but I'm asking to be in it. Beth smiled then, slow and radiant. That, she said, is much better than being reasonable. I leaned forward and kissed her in the attic, surrounded by boxes and old Christmas lights and every year we had missed. She kissed me back with one hand curled in my shirt, the other pressed over the letter, as if blessing the past and releasing it at once. Sunday came anyway. That is the thing about real life. It does not pause for romance. It hands you car keys, deadlines, sisterly opinions, houses to sell, and gallery jobs in another state. Beth went to Denver, but this time no one disappeared. I drove behind her as far as the interstate, and at the rest stop where we said goodbye, she hooked her fingers through my belt loop and pulled me close. 3 weeks, she said. I can do 3 weeks. You say that now. I'll be insufferable by Tuesday. You already are. She kissed me softly. Call me when you get home. Call me when you stop for gas. That's in 40 miles. I'm aware. She laughed, and then she kissed me again, longer, with her hands on my neck and the sun coming up behind her car. 3 weeks later, I flew to Denver with one carry-on and a ridiculous fear of gallery people. Beth met me at baggage claim wearing red lipstick and holding a cardboard sign that said historically important tux owner. I almost dropped my bag. By autumn, we had become experts at airports, video calls, and missing each other honestly. She took the gallery job for 4 months, then decided Denver was a beautiful city that did not need to be hers. I did not ask her to move to Portland. She did not ask me to sell my shop. Instead, we chose slowly. We spent weekends in each other's lives. She learned the names of my employees and charmed my daughter by telling her embarrassing stories about my hair in 1988. I helped Beth pack her mother's house, not as a rescuer, but as the man she wanted beside her when she said goodbye. Some days were awkward. Of course they were. We had habits built in separate lives. She liked music in the morning. I liked silence until coffee. I folded towels. Wrong. She loaded the dishwasher like she was trying to win a chess match. We argued once in December about nothing important and everything underneath it. I got quiet. She called me on it. Don't vanish politely, she said. Stay here and fight like you want us. So I stayed, and afterward, standing in my kitchen with snow tapping the windows, she put her arms around my waist and said, See, we survived being real. By the following spring, Beth rented a small apartment in Portland with a view of the river, 10 minutes from my house, and close enough to my shop that she sometimes stopped by at lunch with sandwiches and opinions. Not moving in, not rushing, not trying to reclaim some teenage version of forever. Building. That was better. On June 12th, 1 year after her message, we drove back to Cedar Ridge. The Bluebird Diner had new carpet at last, though the coffee was still questionable. We sat in the same booth by the window. Beth wore a blue dress, not satin this time, but soft cotton that moved when she laughed. I wore a navy jacket she said made me look almost trustworthy. We ordered cherry pie. Then I took out the old prom photo, now framed between 2 pieces of glass so both sides could be seen. Our young faces on one side, the promise on the other. Beth reached into her purse and pulled out the letter from the attic. You kept it? I asked. I borrowed it from the past, she said. I thought we should give it an answer. She turned the letter over and handed me a pen. My hand was steadier this time. Under my old words, I wrote, We found each other later. Beth took the pen and added, And he bought the pie. I laughed, but my eyes stung. Outside, evening settled over Cedar Ridge. Inside, the jukebox near the counter crackled to life, playing an old Fleetwood Mac song so familiar that Beth and I both froze. She looked at me. "No," I said. "Absolutely not." "Yes," she said, already sliding out of the booth. "There's no dance floor." There wasn't one in the hallway in 1988 either. So I stood. In the narrow space beside our booth, between the dessert case and a table of amused strangers, Beth put her hand in mine. I set my palm at her back. We moved slowly, badly, perfectly. Her silver-threaded hair brushed my cheek. Her head rested against my shoulder. I held her the way I should have held the truth years ago, openly, with both hands. And when she whispered, "We fixed it later," I kissed her temple and looked at our reflection in the diner window. Not young, not unfinished, not too late. Just two people with a second life still big enough to hold them. What would you have done if your high school sweetheart suddenly sent you an old photo with a promise written on the back? Have you ever had someone from your past come back and change everything? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.